Leighanne Levensaler, Senior Vice President of Corporate Strategy and co-head of Workday Ventures. Today I'm joined by Frida Polli, CEO and co-founder of pymetrics. Thanks for joining us, Frida.
Thank you for having me.
Frida is the CEO of an incredibly cool company, a company that is using neuroscience, cognitive neuroscience and analytics to help companies connect with candidates. First, Frida, I'd like to get your thoughts on the current state of the labor market and hiring. By some accounts, this is a good time in the labor market. Low unemployment, long-term unemployment is trending downwards, but at the same time, there's wage stagnation. Corporations are saying they can't find people with the skills they need to advance their corporation. What are your thoughts on the labor market and hiring?
Yeah, the fundamental problem, I think, with the labor market and hiring today is that we're trying to use tools that, were developed 50 years ago to deal with the challenges of today, right? And if you think about some of the things you just outlined, like companies can't find workers with the skills that they need, for example, right? And so we need a better way to understand somebody's actual potential to do a particular job. And by the way, these jobs are continually changing, right? So what you think you need today may be very different than it will be in a couple of years from now. And so we need a better way to identify real talent signals. We need dynamic models to help us understand the talent signals of the future for the jobs of the future, right? And then we need to have that be a tech-enabled process.
So let's talk about how we can use technology to create a more innovative and more inclusive labor market.
The goal of pymetrics and many other hiring technologies is really to automate parts of the process that don't really involve a human right now, right? Or don't involve any human-to-human interaction. And what I mean by that is what pymetrics automates on the hiring front is really the act of a recruiter looking at a resume and making a determination about a candidate. That doesn't actually involve any human-to-human interaction, right? It's sort of behind the scenes. It's an impersonal process. And what we try to do is automate that process so that recruiters have a lot more time freed up to actually spend time with candidates. So we really try to help them with that initial pass filtering so that there's a much closer fit between the candidates that they're meeting and the people that they're trying to hire. And therefore, they can free up their time to really engage in these high value activities of actually interviewing people, seeing if they're the right fit for the candidate and for the company, and digging in more deeply into a further stage of the process that should be a human-to-human process.
Right. And this seems like a very obvious area, to work on, big problems to solve. Yep. How did you and your team come to solve this problem? Like, you're getting your MBA at Harvard, you're a cognitive neuroscientist.
How did I ever think about recruiting?
Yes, yeah. And how are we so fortunate to get you in the human capital management field? How did that happen?
I spent, a decade in academic neuroscience really thinking this was going to be my career for life. And so I was actually pretty unpleasantly surprised to figure out that I thought I should be doing something different. So somebody recommended business school, and I thought that was a crazy idea. So I was like, okay, I'm going to see what happens, and got a fellowship to go to Harvard. And that was my own sort of career search process. And I was kind of in my mid-30s. I was a single mom at the time. And it was at that point that the light bulb kind of went off, because here I was looking at recruiting thinking, wow, this really hasn't changed in a very long time, right? Since I was applying to jobs out of college. And oh, by the way, they're trying to understand something fundamental about a person and then predict an outcome, a hiring outcome, and improve that matching. And I'm like, but that's basically what we've been doing in the lab for a very long time. So it's just kind of a series of light bulbs that went off.
Okay, so Frida, we've talked about the why. So let's talk about the how. I mean, this is fun. This is a neuroscience game. People actually enjoy using pymetrics. Can you tell me about how it works?
Sure. The concept behind pymetrics is that there are a series of cognitive and emotional activities that you can do. We call them games. They're not quite as fun as, Candy Crush or something like that, or Madden, but they are activities you do on the computer, therefore people call them games. And they were created by scientists to measure different cognitive and emotional things. Things like, your memory, your planning, your attention on the cognitive side. On the emotional side, it's things like how altruistic are you, how risk-taking are you, what type of reward do you respond to. And they are more entertaining and engaging than a typical questionnaire that's asking you the same question the same way 500 times over, or something of that nature. So people do find them easier to get through, I think, and just sort of like more interactive. And at the end, you know, you kind of get some feedback about yourself, hopefully learn something.
Right.
So
How long is the experience?
it doesn't take that long. It takes on average about 20 to 25 minutes for people to go through it. So.
And what about the business outcomes?
Things people care about are a couple things. One is recruiting outcomes. So one of the most dismal statistics out there is that, you know, 250 people apply for any open role, but then of that person that gets hired, on average, that person fails 30 to 50% of the time. That's just a terrible stat, right? If you had 250 options and the option you pick doesn't work out a third to half of the time, something isn't right, right? So that's one of the things, so that kind of embodies the types of things people care about. So one is like, do I really need to look at 250 people? Isn't there a smaller subset that could yield the same number of successful hires? So that's one of the outcomes that people have seen pretty dramatic improvements in, is that I get a much better fit of that group of applicants that's applying to me in my final interview days, right? And then I hire a lot more out of that final interview day than I used to in the past. We've seen doubling of hiring rates, which is very exciting for people. Another thing people look at is long-term retention. Are people that are chosen, to be high fit by the algorithms, are they more likely to be at the organization after 12 months, 24 months. So that's another thing that we've seen, 30 to 60% improvement on. And the other thing, which is even kind of cooler in a way, or just as cool, is that in professions where you can sort of measure success in a pretty quantifiable way, we've actually seen performance gains that are pretty substantial, anywhere between 30 and 100% improvements in performance gains. So again, when people talk to some of our customers like Unilever, Accenture, they get very excited because they've actually seen these results themselves. And that, I think, is what really gets people jazzed about the idea of using new technology. Is they're like, wow, not only is it, cool and more interactive and all the rest of it, but it actually yields better business outcomes, and and it's a better candidate experience too. So there really is, like, it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
Well, you're getting more efficient, so presumably you don't need as many recruiters. Is this a concern?
No, I mean, people are really understaffed usually, right? So if they can have a tool that's actually going to allow them to interview people that are a better fit for the organization, that frees up time to do lots of other things, which they desperately need to do. So it's really making HR much more strategic as opposed to just sort of operational, like processing stuff. We view HR at Pymetrics, in any case, as really a strategic player that should have a seat at the table. Yeah, because at the end of the day, look at any company. The company thrives because of the people that it hires. So it's kind of ridiculous, in my opinion, that HR is not considered more strategic. But the problem is it's been so operational and sort of, stuck in terms of its ability to be, better served by the technology world, that it's sort of been not able to be as strategic as it would like.
Exactly. And I was baiting you a little bit because that's a question that we get a lot. If we implement Workday, will we reduce our staff needs? So, what we really want, there's a multitude of problems to solve.
For sure. Yeah.
Let's solve the more strategic ones. Let's use technology to handle some of the operational, activity that, is better served with technology.
Exactly.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Frida. It's a great conversation, and I'm looking forward to part 2.